It's finally time. I am going to be reviewing some people's reptile enclosures. Hi everyone, my name's Taylor, you're watching Pets in a Pod, and today we're going to be reviewing, I think, 7 or 8 different enclosures that people have sent me, and I'm very excited. This is my first enclosure review, but I wanted to do it, and I'm sorry it took so long. Those of you that did send me stuff, I was just waiting for more enclosures to look at, and also some time to sit down and do this. So if you see me looking down quite a lot, it's because I'm looking at my phone for these pictures, but you guys will see them up on the screen, so I will actually scoot over so we can make that easier for you all to see everything. I will not be posting any of the names of the people who sent me these. Many people sent me their enclosures through DM, and I did make it clear in my instructions that I would not be sharing names, and that's just personally because I feel like when I'm reviewing, if I say something negative or just anything that's bad about the tank, I don't want that to come back on the person, and I don't want people finding the people who sent me their images and like bashing them and annoying them. Alright, so the first enclosure we're looking at is a 12 by 12 by 18. This is for a 7-month-old Crested Gecko, and they had named their Gecko Herald, which I think is hilarious. And their description, as I said, it has a cork background with lots of foliage. He has a hide on the bottom of his enclosure and paper towel as substrate. So my first impression is that I do like seeing a lot of green, especially for such a young Crested Gecko. Coverage is very important. I also like the variety of plants there. Not only does it look better visually, but it also provides the gecko with different textures and sizes of hiding spots, which is good for enrichment purposes. One thing I noticed right away is I see your little food dishes on the bottom there on the outside of the enclosure, and if you're putting those just in the bottom and you're letting your gecko come down and eat those, I mean, that will work, but I would buy a raised food dish of some kind, you know, like a magnetic or a suction cup kind, because Crested geckos, being arboreal, will have an easier time and feel safer if they can feed at a higher elevation. See anything else wrong with this necessarily? Of course, I'm a proponent for like bioactive and real plants, but with a Crested Gecko this young, I don't think it's necessary, especially when this is not the final enclosure, being only an 18 by 18 by 12. So overall, very good. 4 out of 5. Because like I said, I would do more natural, but I think this is perfect for a gecko this age, and yeah, thanks. So next we're actually going to look at an invertebrate tank, which I think is a cool way to mix it up. And so in this enclosure, it's a 16-gallon fish tank, and they said they have millipedes, cockroaches, dubia roaches, and isopods. And so this is kind of their little bug tank. Looking at this aerial shot, because this is what's going to give us the best view, notice a ton of leaf litter built up in that corner. It's hard to tell with an aerial shot. I think in the right there, the top right, that's like an overhang of some sort. It looks like they can go under there as well. If we look at it from the front view, you can actually see that better. I think this is a better view actually. Lots of moss, lots of leaf litter. I think this is great for invertebrates. I love the names, by the way. It looks good. It looks pretty good. I really like this enclosure. I'm not too much into insects. I don't know too much about insects, but I think from what I know, this is fine. Many of these enjoy moist, dark places, and it looks like that's what you're providing with all of this moss and the coverage. It's almost perfect. 4.5 out of 5? I don't know. You're doing good. Okay, so next we have a ball python enclosure. They did say it is not super decorated, but she seems to enjoy it, and they built the enclosure themselves. So they said it's lockable, and the bottom is sealed with aquarium silicone so that the wood will last longer. So let's take a look. It's always so nice to do something homemade. Like you almost take more pride in it because you've also built it yourself. I don't know the dimensions of it based on the decor. Maybe like a 4 by 2 because the decorations look on the smaller side. I do see the ventilation, which is good. I'm gonna say I don't know much about ball pythons. Ball pythons are not my expertise. There's some ventilation at the top in the form of holes, but it doesn't look like there's anything covering those holes, which is something I personally am worried about. I'm also worried about that lamp on the wood. I would definitely get some mesh and staple the mesh on the inside so that way when you look at it from the outside, it just looks like the mesh holes. Definitely put some covering. You are gonna lose that ball python one day. The lamp on the wood scares the crap out of me. I would cut a big area, bigger than the lamp. So the lamp is nowhere near any of the wood. Just put some kind of metal wiring stapled up into the wood and then let your lamp sit on the metal. This scares me as a fire hazard. And then we do have a picture. There is the ball python there in the hide. So the ball python looks pretty small. So the ball python does fit in there. That means this enclosure does look pretty big for it. So my recommendation is, I know you said there's not a lot of decor, but she seems to enjoy it. Add decor. Add decor. What I do know about ball pythons is that they are fairly shy-ish species, and they do a lot better when there's things they can climb on and hide on. So, and it doesn't have to be expensive. Go out, get big sticks, like big thick sticks that the snake could climb on. I bought cork in bulk, and so you can do the same thing. I'll link where I get my cork from in the description. But I would do a lot, like big log wooden pieces, and then more plants. I'll give it a 2 because of a couple reasons. One, I do think it needs a lot more coverage in some shape or form, a lot more climbing material. Ball pythons do get this reputation for being a pet rock because they just sit in a ball. But I think if we provide them the climbing space, they will use it. I've seen that happen. So that's my one issue. And then the second issue, the major one, why I'm putting it at a 2, is just the safety. The holes in the top have got to be covered, and that lamp should not be sitting on that wood. That freaks me out. Oh, and I also didn't notice, is there UVB in there? I haven't even been checking for UVB. It looks like there's no other lighting available. Get UVB for your ball python. So I think this is a 2. You've got a great start. I see that. I love that you built it yourself. I love that it's a good size, but we've got to get some UVB, safe place to set your light and cover those holes, or it's gonna escape, especially once you start adding in some climbing material. So good start, keep going, come back to me when you've done more and we can talk it out. Okay, next we have another Crested Gecko enclosure. His name is Remington, and I just got this single picture, so and I don't know the dimensions, so I'm just gonna kind of go off first impressions and what I see. And this is a good example for that baby we saw in the first one. So a person who has the baby Crested Gecko, I would look at this as like a possible future tank design. So as you can see, you see the lifted food station up on the right there. It looks like a mushroom ledge. Oh, the Crested Gecko's under. I didn't even see that. I didn't even see the Crusty there. So you see it's lifted. It's just, it allows for a more comforting feeding environment for arboreal animals. I love the big like wooden pieces that are like jutting out and going to like in different angles, and all the wood at the bottom, and it looks like a little bit of rock too. Really good. And the plant coverage. So there is just a single plant here. Personally, I like to mix it up and have a variety of plants, but this is plenty of coverage. A happy Crested Gecko, I'm sure. Perfectly a fine size. It has plenty of space to move around, so I like this one. I will give it a 5 out of 5 because it checks all my boxes, and I think it's pretty good. Okay, this next one has different kinds of reptiles. So we know in one enclosure there's a water-based enclosure. It sounds like we have a water monitor, axolotl eel, which is not the same thing as a real axolotl, but we have like an eel and a water monitor in there. And then there's another enclosure that they sent me, and they didn't talk much about it, but it looks like a baby savanna monitor. Definitely some kind of baby monitor species. And the water one is very interesting. It's definitely not something I see this many things kind of together. You have a water monitor, which I'll show a picture of. It's pretty small here, so it's definitely a baby. So I'm assuming this is a grow out tank. That monitor's gonna grow fast, by the way. I just wanna let you know, start getting a large adult tank set up like ASAP. But it looks like this is a grow out tank. So the water monitor is pretty small, but they're keeping it with like fish and eels, and water monitors are fish hunters. So I worry that even though the fish might be too big for it to eat, it's still gonna go after them and attack them, which that's fine if that's your intention, but the fish you have in there are not necessarily feeder fish. It seems like you have fish in there you actually care about. I don't think the mix here is safe. I would get your little baby water monitor something else to grow out in the meantime. I do see you have a couple heat lamps. I don't know if one of those contains UVB, but monitors have to have UVB. They're one of the few things that I'm like adamant about. I think all reptiles should have UVB, but monitors have to, in my opinion. And so I hope one of those is UVB. Even if it is, it should be a strip light. It's a baby monitor for sure. Again, I don't see UVB, I just see the glow from the one light. Please get your reptiles UVB. It's bothering me that they don't have that, especially Savannah. Savannahs are so terribly uncared for, and so we need to change that. So although this is definitely a grout tank too, it looks like you have 2 baby monitors. I am gonna recommend that you stop. Do not get any more monitors until these become adults, because you need to make sure you have the size. I mean, I don't know much about your life. I've just seen a lot of terrible situations where people just get a bunch of cute baby animals and then they grow up to adults and they don't know what to do with them. They don't have the money to care for them. But yeah, I'm gonna give these a 2 out of 5 as well, because they're missing that UVB and that's really bothering me. But the water tank does look a lot better, and I think that's because that you use that tank for those fish. But like I said, I would just get the monitor out of there. The monitor is gonna kill those fish. Moving on to our next tank. So this one is a Leopard Gecko tank, and the person said the Leopard Gecko's name is Bean. He's a juvenile, so and he says it doesn't look the nicest, and he said he has heat lamps even though they're not recommended. I'm gonna talk about that. And he says it's just to keep the temperature in the right place. He also has a heat mat under the tan rock. And then he also sent me his garden snails, although they're unrelated to the lizard. So first, let's look at the Leopard Gecko. So I have this single picture, Repticarpet. I am not an advocate for Repticarpet. I am sorry to say this. It's not the best. And so for Repticarpet, if you can get your, okay, here, if you want a clean preference and something fairly cheap, do tile. Go to your hardware store, buy tile, and use that. But you said it's a juvenile, so I'm hoping that does not look like a juvenile, to be honest. That looks full grown, so you need to treat it like an adult Leopard Gecko, which means I would move it into a 40-gallon tank. It is time to get it in a 40-gallon. That looks like a 20 long that you have it in, which is fine. That's considered the minimum, and many people, it's acceptable. But if you want to go above and beyond, 40-gallon tank. The enclosure itself with what you have looks pretty good. You have quite a few hides. I see you have your humid hide there in the jar. You have a lot of rocks, a lot of hides. You said there's a heat mat under that tan rock. I think that's on the far left. And then you have a heat lamp overhead. So I don't know if where you live is cold, but a heat mat and 2 heat lamps seems like a tiny bit of overkill, but I don't think anything's wrong with the heat lamps. And in fact, if you just want to use heat lamps, you can do it. Go for it. You don't need the mat, unless you also live in extremely cold conditions. You don't need even to have the heat mat on at night. Leopard geckos are fine with temperature drops at night. I would do UVB if you could. Leopard geckos are one of the ones where it's not necessarily necessary. I do it because it's natural, and I try to stick to the natural environment for all of my animals. So I would do UVB if you can. 3.5 out of 5, because actually it's a lot better than you think. And then just really quickly, I just want to show everyone the little snail enclosure, because I think that's super cute. And snails are a lot easier because they're just snails. So I like the little tipped over terracotta pot with the moss and all of that. I really like your snail enclosure. 5 out of 5 for the snails. And now we will hit our last enclosure here. So this is a rough green snake tank. And they mentioned that this was a budget setup. So keeping that in mind, I think this looks excellent for a budget setup. You have plenty of plants, you have a stick in the middle, and you have a water dish in the bottom, and I think that's fine for a rough green snake. Oh, there he is. Oh my gosh, that's a hide and seek game, guys. Try and find the rough green snake. Can you find it? So the rough green, the snake is still small enough that it's not gonna like knock down those plants, because even though they're suction cup plants, the snake is really tiny. So I think this is fine. If this is not an adult though, and this is just like a grout thing, I would eventually move it into a tank that same height looks okay. I'm not sure what size this is, but maybe something longer as well. So as a snake, they benefit more from like being able to stretch out and go back and forth rather than going like up and down. Very few snakes are like up and down snakes. I think it would benefit from something like longer in the future, but I really like this as a budget setup. Again, it kind of ticks all the boxes. It has water, it has climbing space, it has coverage. I see lighting on the top. I don't know what that lighting is, but I'm good on you for lighting. If you don't have UVB, I suggest UVB. But yeah, I think it's good. I give this one a 4 out of 5 as well, because it's pretty good. It's just I don't know enough about it to give it a 5. But yeah, 4 out of 5, definitely. All right, guys, and that was it. Thank you so much for hanging around and sticking around. I hope you enjoyed this rating video. I might do one in a future, like next year or something. I really hope you enjoyed it. I do post weekly, so if you want to subscribe and you don't miss anything, do that. Otherwise, I'll see you guys next week.